Part B of the Indian Constitution focuses on the Union Executive, detailing Articles 50 to 278. This part outlines the roles and responsibilities of several important figures in the Indian government. The Union Executive comprises the President, the Vice President, the Prime Minister, the Council of Ministers, and the Attorney General of India. The President of India holds a pivotal position as the head of the Indian state. As the first citizen of India, the President is not only a ceremonial leader but also serves as a symbol of national unity, integrity, and solidarity. The importance of the President is underscored in Article 52, which states that there shall be a President of India. This role unites the diverse people of India under a single figure. The Vice President, who is elected by the members of the Electoral College for the Vice Presidency, assists the President and can step in if the President is unable to perform their duties. The functions of the Vice President are outlined primarily in Article 63, which emphasizes the importance of this office in maintaining the continuity of the executive branch. The Prime Minister, as specified in Article 75, is the leader of the government and the head of the Council of Ministers. The Prime Minister is responsible for advising the President and making crucial decisions regarding the administration of the country. The Prime Minister chooses the members of the Council of Ministers, who collectively help implement government policies and manage various departments. The Council of Ministers works closely with the Prime Minister, and their responsibilities are elaborated in Articles 74 and 75. These articles establish that the Council of Ministers aids and advises the President, allowing for effective governance. The relationship between the Prime Minister and the Council of Ministers is essential for the smooth functioning of the executive branch. The Attorney General of India, mentioned in Article 76, serves as the chief legal advisor to the government. This role is significant as the Attorney General represents the government in legal matters and provides necessary legal advice to the Union government. In summary, Articles 50 to 278 of the Indian Constitution form a comprehensive framework for the Union Executive, identifying its crucial components and explaining their roles. This structure ensures that the executive branch operates smoothly, maintaining the integrity and functionality of the government while symbolizing the unity of the nation. The design of this part of the Constitution reflects the importance of leadership and governance in a diverse and democratic country like India. Election of the President of India. In India, the President is not elected directly by the citizens. Instead, a group known as the Electoral College is responsible for the election. This Electoral College is made up of elected members of both houses of Parliament, the Lok Sabha and the Rajya Sabha. Elected members of the legislative assemblies of various states. Elected members of the legislative assemblies from the Union territories, specifically Delhi and Puducherry. It's important to note that nominated members of Parliament or state legislative assemblies do not participate in the presidential election. This means that nominated members and members of the legislative councils from bicameral states do not have a say in this voting process. Additionally, the 104th Constitutional Amendment Act of 2019 ended the special representation for the Anglo-Indian community in the Lok Sabha and state legislative assemblies through nominations, ceasing this provision on 25 January 2020. If a legislative assembly is dissolved, its members lose their right to vote in the presidential election until new elections are held. According to the Constitution of India, Article 55 ensures fairness in the representation of states and a balance between the overall states and the Union when electing the President. To achieve this, each elected member of a state's legislative assembly is assigned a specific number of votes based on the population of the state. The formula for calculating the value of a vote for a member of the Legislative Assembly, MLA, is Value of the vote of an MLA is equal to total population of the state, total number of elected members in the state legislative assembly, in multiples of 1000. Members of parliament, MPs, also have their votes determined based on the total votes assigned to the legislative assemblies of all states divided by the total number of elected members in both houses of parliament. Value of the vote of an MP is equal to total value of votes of all MLAs of all states, total number of elected members of parliament. This system is designed to ensure that every state and union territory is fairly represented. The presidential elections utilize a proportional representation system using a method known as the single transferable vote, and voting is conducted via secret ballot. This means that the candidate who wins must receive a majority of the votes, indicating that they have significant support. To be declared the president, a candidate must obtain a specific quota of votes. This quota is calculated by dividing the total number of valid votes by the number of candidates plus 1 and then adding 1. Electoral quota is equal to total number of valid votes polled, number of candidates plus 1, plus 1. Each member of the Electoral College receives one ballot paper and is required to mark their preferences for candidates in order, example 1, 2, 3, etc. The counting process begins with the first preference votes. If a candidate meets the required quota, they are declared elected. If not, votes from the candidate with the least votes are transferred to others based on second preferences, and this process continues until a candidate achieves the necessary quota. All election disputes are resolved by the Supreme Court of India, whose ruling is final. Notably, even if the Electoral College is not complete, as in cases where vacancies exist, this does not impact the legitimacy of the presidential election. Some members of the Constituent Assembly argued against the indirect election method for the president, calling it undemocratic and advocating for direct elections. However, the framers of the Constitution opted for indirect elections primarily because the president serves more as a nominal head with real powers held by the Prime Minister and the Council of Ministers. It would seem illogical to have a president elected by the public who has no substantial power. Additionally, conducting direct elections for such a symbolic role would involve considerable expense and effort due to India's vast electorate. The constitution makers were cautious that if the president were elected solely by the parliament, a candidate affiliated with the ruling party might be favored, undermining the president's role as a representative of both the union and the states. The existing system allows for balanced representation, embodying both electoral assemblies' votes. In summary, the election of the President of India is a structured process defined within the Indian Constitution. Articles such as Article 55 highlight the principles of fair representation, while the Electoral College's composition ensures that various levels of government partake in this crucial electoral process. The election outcomes reflect the principles of democracy, balance, and representation within India's federal structure. Qualifications, oath, and conditions for election as President of India. To become the President of India, a person must meet certain qualifications and follow specific procedures. These requirements ensure that only suitable candidates can hold this important office. First, one of the basic qualifications is that the person must be a citizen of India. This means that only those who hold Indian citizenship can aspire to be the president. Additionally, the candidate must be at least 35 years old. This age requirement helps to ensure that candidates have enough maturity and experience for such a significant role. Further, to be eligible, the person must also meet the qualifications to be elected as a member of the Lok Sabha, which is the lower house of India's parliament. This typically involves having a good understanding of political systems and public policies. Another important rule is that the candidate should not hold any office of profit under the union government, any state government, local authorities, or any other public authority. There are exceptions to this rule. Sitting presidents, vice presidents, governors of states, and ministers of both the union and state governments do not fall under the definition of holding an office of profit. This allows them to run for the presidency without any conflict of interest. Candidates must also gather support from at least 50 electors to be nominated for the presidency. These supporters must include both proposers and seconders. This ensures that only those candidates who have some backing in the electoral community can run for this high office. In addition to securing nomination, every candidate is required to make a security deposit of 15,000 rupees with the Reserve Bank of India. This deposit acts as a financial stake in the election, and it can be forfeited if the candidate fails to get at least 1/6 of the votes cast during the election. Before 1997, the rules were different, as candidates needed only 10 proposers and seconders, and the security deposit was just 2,500 rupees. However, these numbers were increased in 1997 to help reduce the number of non-serious candidates entering the race. The qualifications for the President of India are explicitly mentioned through various articles of the Constitution. Article 58 deals specifically with the qualification for election as President, ensuring clarity and legality in the electoral process. The rules also reflect the overarching aim of maintaining the integrity and seriousness of the presidential election in a nation that values democratic principles and governance. In summary, the process of electing the President of India is designed with strict regulations to maintain the dignity of the office. The necessary qualifications, required age, and electoral backing make it clear that this is not just another position, it is the highest constitutional office in India. Following these guidelines helps ensure that the elected president truly represents the interests and aspirations of the Indian people. By adhering to these requirements, the electoral process promotes accountability and transparency, which are essential in a healthy democracy. Oath or affirmation by the President of India. Before taking on the responsibilities of the office, the President of India must take an oath or affirmation. This is an important ceremony that signifies the President's commitment to the country and its constitution. The oath is designed to ensure that the President will carry out their duties with integrity and dedication. The President's oath includes 3 key promises. First, the President vows to faithfully carry out the duties of the office. This means that they will perform the roles assigned to them diligently and honestly. Second, the President pledges to preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of India and the laws of the land. This is crucial because the Constitution is the supreme law of the country and is the foundation on which the government operates. By protecting the Constitution, the President ensures that the rights and freedoms of the citizens are maintained. Finally, the President commits to serving the people of India and ensuring their well-being. This highlights the responsibility of the President to focus on the needs and welfare of all citizens, reflecting a spirit of public service. The oath of office is formally administered by the Chief Justice of India. This position is held by the head of the judiciary in India and has a significant role in maintaining the rule of law. If the Chief Justice is not available, the senior-most judge of the Supreme Court present at the time will carry out this duty. It is also noteworthy that any individual who acts as President or takes on the responsibilities of the President temporarily is required to take a similar oath or affirmation. This ensures that anyone performing the functions of the President upholds the same commitment to the Constitution and the people. This oath is outlined in Article 60 of the Indian Constitution, which states that the President must take an oath before assuming office. This legal requirement ensures that the President acknowledges their responsibilities to the nation and its laws right from the beginning of their term. By taking this oath, The President not only cements their role as a leader in India but also reinforces the values enshrined in the Constitution. The act of taking an oath is a symbolic gesture that underscores the seriousness of the office and the expectations placed on the person who occupies it. The President's commitment to serving the people and protecting the Constitution is a fundamental aspect of India's democratic framework. Conditions for holding the President's office. The Constitution of India sets clear rules for who can become President and what rights and benefits they have while in office. Let's break down these conditions in simpler terms. Firstly, a candidate for the presidency must not be a member of either the Lok Sabha, House of the People, or the Rajya Sabha, Council of States, which are the two houses of parliament. Similarly, they cannot be part of any state legislature. If a person who is already a member of either house is elected as president, they automatically lose their seat in that house from the day they start their presidential duties. Secondly, it is important for the president not to hold any other job or position that gives them a profit. This is to ensure that they can focus entirely on their responsibilities as the leader of the country. The president also has the right to live in the official residence called Rashtrapati Bhavan without having to pay rent. This grand building in New Delhi serves as the home and office for the president. In terms of salary, the president receives a monthly payment that is decided by the parliament. As of 2018, the president's salary was raised from 1.50 lakh rupees to 5 lakh rupees per month. It's important to mention that during their time in office, the salary and benefits cannot be reduced. Former presidents also enjoy certain privileges. For example, in 2008, the pension for a retired president was increased to 50% of their last salary per month, which amounts to 3 lakh rupees annually. Additionally, retired presidents are provided with a furnished home, telephone, car, medical treatment, travel allowances, and office expenses, which can go up to 1 lakh rupee per year. If a president passes away, their spouse is entitled to a family pension at half the rate of the retired president's pension, along with similar benefits like a furnished residence, vehicle, and other allowances. The President of India has several legal protections during their term. They are immune from being sued for any actions performed as part of their official duties, which means they cannot be held legally accountable for these actions. Even in cases related to personal behavior, they are protected from criminal charges while they serve, meaning they cannot be arrested or detained during their time in office. However, if someone wants to initiate a civil lawsuit against the president regarding personal matters, they must give 2 months' notice before doing so. These conditions and privileges are in line with several articles in the Indian Constitution, particularly Articles 60, 61, and 362, among others, which outline the election, responsibilities, and legal protections for the president. Understanding these rules helps in recognizing the framework within which the president operates, ensuring that they have the necessary independence and support to carry out the duties of one of the highest offices in the country. Term of the President's office in India. The President of India serves a term of 5 years, starting from the day they officially take office. This position is very important, and the President is seen as the head of the state. However, if the President wants to step down, they can do so at any time by sending a resignation letter to the Vice President. This simple procedure ensures that there is a way for the President to leave their role if they choose to. In addition to resignation, the President can also be removed from office before their term ends through a process known as impeachment. This is laid out in Article 61 of the Indian Constitution, which describes how the President can be impeached for violating the Constitution. The impeachment process requires a 2/3 majority in both houses of Parliament, making it a serious and challenging procedure. Another important point is that the president can continue to serve beyond their 5-year term if the election for the new president has not yet taken place. This ensures that there is no gap in leadership. When a new president is elected, they will take charge, and the previous president will then leave office. The president can seek re-election and serve multiple terms, meaning there is no limit to the number of times a person can be elected as President of India. This is quite different from the rules in the United States, where a person can only serve as president for 2 terms. This distinction reflects different political traditions and systems in various countries. To sum up, the President of India has a significant role and a clearly defined term, which is governed by the Constitution. The ability to resign or be impeached adds a layer of seriousness to this role, while the possibility of re-election allows for continuity in leadership if the electorate desires it. Impeachment of the President of India. In India, the President can be removed from office through a process known as impeachment, which occurs if there is a serious violation of the Constitution. However, the Constitution does not explain what exactly a violation of the Constitution means, leaving some ambiguity around this term. The impeachment process can begin in either House of Parliament, which includes the Lok Sabha, House of the People, and the Rajya Sabha, Council of States. To initiate impeachment charges, at least 1/4 of the members of the House must sign them. Additionally, the President must be given a notice of 14 days before any further action is taken. Once the House passes the impeachment resolution with a 2/3 majority of its total members, the resolution is sent to the other House for investigation. During this investigation, the President has the right to present their case and can be represented by someone else if they choose. If the second House also finds the charges to be valid and passes the impeachment resolution with a 2/3 majority, the President is removed from office. This removal takes effect on the date the resolution is passed. Hence, impeachment is considered a serious, quasi-judicial process within the Parliament. It's interesting to note a couple of important points about this process. First, the nominated members of either house can take part in the impeachment, despite not participating in the election of the president. Conversely, elected members from state legislative assemblies and union territories like Delhi and Puducherry, who do vote in the presidential election, do not have a role in the impeachment process. As of now, it is significant to mention that no President of India has ever been impeached. This indicates that the process, while clearly laid out in the Constitution, has not been utilized to remove a sitting president. Relevant articles of the Constitution. The procedures for impeachment are outlined in Article 61 of the Indian Constitution. This article states that the President can be impeached for violation of the Constitution, and it details the necessary steps for carrying out the impeachment process. Additionally, Articles 79, 80, and 81 describe the composition of the Parliament and how each house operates, which adds context to the processes involved in impeachment. In terms of laws, the impeachment process may be further guided by the rules established by both houses of Parliament, ensuring that there are clear guidelines on how the process is to be conducted. Overall, the impeachment process is a vital mechanism to ensure that the President remains accountable to the Constitution and the people of India. Vacancy in the President's office. A vacancy in the President's office of India can happen for several reasons. Understanding these reasons is important to grasp how the democratic process functions in the country. Firstly, a vacancy can occur when the President's 5-year term comes to an end. The President of India is elected for a term of 5 years, as stated in Article 56 of the Indian Constitution. Before this term expires, new elections need to be conducted to ensure that there is no gap in leadership. The election process must be completed before the current President's term is over to maintain continuity in governance. Another possible reason for a vacancy is the President's resignation. According to Article 56, a President can resign at any time, and this resignation must be submitted to the Vice President of India. This can occur for various reasons, including personal issues or a desire to step down from the office. Vacancies can also happen through the process of impeachment. The Indian Constitution outlines a specific procedure for impeaching a president in Articles 61 and 68. This process is rigorous and requires a two-thirds majority in both houses of parliament to remove a president from office. The grounds for impeachment include violation of the Constitution. Additionally, if the president passes away while in office, the position will also become vacant. This unfortunate event can happen suddenly, and the country then has the responsibility to ensure that a new president is elected promptly. There are other scenarios where a vacancy might occur beyond the reasons already mentioned. For instance, if the president becomes disqualified from holding office due to legal issues or health conditions that prevent them from performing their duties, or if their election is ruled as void by the courts, a vacancy will arise. When a vacancy is expected due to the expiration of the incumbent president's term, the Constitution mandates that an election to fill that vacancy must take place in a timely manner. The elections are held under the supervision of the Election Commission of India, which ensures that the entire process is fair and transparent. In summary, the President's office in India can face a vacancy due to the end of a term, resignation, removal through impeachment, death, or disqualification. Each of these situations involves specific legal frameworks outlined in the Indian Constitution, which ensures stability and continuity in the highest office of the nation. Understanding these mechanisms is crucial for appreciating the functioning of democracy in India. In India, the President plays a very important role as the Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces, which includes the Army, the Navy, and the Air Force. This means that the President oversees all military operations and decisions. One of the key responsibilities of the President is to appoint the top leaders of each branch of the armed forces. These leaders are known as the chiefs, and their roles are crucial in managing and directing military activities. The President's power also extends to matters of war and peace. According to the Constitution of India, the President has the authority to declare war or to negotiate and conclude peace. However, this action is not done unilaterally, it requires the approval of Parliament. This provision ensures that the executive powers of the President are balanced by the legislative authority of Parliament, promoting a system of checks and balances. The relevant laws and articles pertaining to these powers can be found in Article 53 and Article 111 of the Indian Constitution. Article 53 states that the executive power of the Union is vested in the President, who can exercise this power either directly or through officers subordinate to them. Article 111 stipulates that the President can return a bill for reconsideration but must act in accordance with the advice of the Council of Ministers. In addition to these, the Defence Act also outlines more specific rules governing the organization and command of the armed forces. This structure is designed to ensure that military power remains under civilian control, thus safeguarding the democratic values of the nation. Understanding the military powers of the President is essential, as it reflects the balance of power in India's democratic framework. The military is a vital component of national security, and having a civilian leader at the top ensures that armed forces operate in alignment with democratic principles and public accountability. This chain of command allows for effective management of military strategy and operations, contributing to India's stability and security in a complex global environment. Emergency powers in India. The Constitution of India grants the President certain special powers to handle emergencies effectively. There are three main types of emergencies recognized by the Constitution, each with its own rules and conditions. These are national emergency, President's rule, and financial emergency. Each type of emergency serves a different purpose and allows the government to act swiftly in times of crisis. National Emergency, Article 352. A national emergency can be declared when the country faces serious threats. According to Article 352 of the Indian Constitution, the President can proclaim an emergency based on three scenarios. War, when India is in a state of war with another country. External aggression, when there is an attack on India by a foreign nation. Armed rebellion, when there is widespread unrest or rebellion against the government within the country. When a national emergency is declared, the President receives extraordinary powers that significantly change how the government operates. Here are some of those powers. The President can change how financial resources are shared between the Union government and the states. This means that funds can be reallocated to where they are needed most during a crisis. The President can suspend certain fundamental rights of citizens, though this suspension does not apply to the right to life and personal liberty, protected under Article 21, or the right against double jeopardy and self-incrimination, under Article 20. This means that while some freedoms may be restricted during a national emergency, people's basic need for life and liberty still remains protected. President's Rule, Article 356 and 365. President's Rule is also known as a state emergency or constitutional emergency. This can be declared under Article 356 if there is a failure of constitutional machinery in a state. Additionally, Article 365 allows the President to impose this rule if a state fails to comply with directions issued by the Union government. When President's rule is in effect, the President gains several significant powers. The President can take over the functions of the state government, which means that the central government will step in to manage the state's affairs. The President has the authority to declare that the Parliament will exercise the powers of the state legislature. This means that all legislative activities can be conducted by Parliament instead of the State Assembly. In situations where the Lok Sabha, the lower house of Parliament, is not meeting, the President can approve expenditures from the state's funds, ensuring that necessary financial decisions can continue without delay. Financial Emergency, Article 360. A financial emergency can be proclaimed by the President according to Article 360 if there is a serious threat to India's financial stability or credit. This type of emergency focuses primarily on the nation's economic situation. During a financial emergency, the President has the authority to direct reductions in salaries and allowances across various sectors. This includes all or any class of persons serving in connection with the affairs of the Union, and even judges of the Supreme Court and High Courts may have their salaries reduced. This type of emergency reflects the government's responsibility to maintain economic stability, ensuring that the country can manage and recover from economic distress. In conclusion, the emergency powers laid out in the Indian Constitution serve as essential tools for the government to maintain order and stability. They enable quick and decisive action during times of crisis, although they also come with significant implications for citizens' rights and state autonomy. Understanding these powers helps citizens grasp how their government can act in extreme situations to protect the nation and its citizens. Veto power of the President. In India, the President is an important figure in the legislative process. A bill that is passed by the Parliament can only become a law if the President agrees to it. This is known as giving assent. According to Article 111 of the Indian Constitution, the President has three choices when a bill is presented. First, the President can agree to the bill and give his or her assent. This is the simplest option, and it allows the bill to become law. Second, the President can refuse to give assent. This is known as withholding assent. When the President chooses this option, the bill does not become law. Third, the President can send the bill back to Parliament for further discussion, but this does not apply to money bills. Money bills are special types of legislation that deal with taxes and government spending. If the Parliament debates the bill again and passes it, even with changes, the President is then required to give assent to it, as stated in the same article. The role of the President also comes into play during elections. If there is a delay in electing a new President due to any reason, the current President remains in office. This is important to ensure that there is no gap in leadership, known as an interregnum. During this time, the Vice President does not take over the duties of the President. When a vacancy in the office of the President occurs due to resignation, removal, or death, the Constitution mandates that a new election takes place within 6 months. The newly elected President will serve a full term of 5 years from when they take over the position. In addition to this, if the President is unable to perform their duties because of illness or absence, the Vice President steps in to carry out those responsibilities. If there is no Vice President available due to a vacancy in that office, then the Chief Justice of India, or if that position is also vacant, the next most senior judge of the Supreme Court takes on the role of acting President. It is essential to understand that anyone acting as President, whether it be the Vice President or the Chief Justice, has all the powers and privileges associated with the presidential office. They will receive the benefits, allowances, and privileges as determined by the Indian Parliament. This arrangement ensures that the executive branch of government continues to function smoothly and maintains the stability of governance in India, according to the provisions laid out in the Constitution. This framework is vital for upholding rule of law and democratic governance in the country. Powers and functions of the President of India. The President of India holds a significant position in the Indian political system and has various powers and responsibilities. These can be categorized into several groups. Let's explore them in detail. Executive powers. The President has several executive powers, which include the authority to appoint various officials. For example, the President appoints the Prime Minister, who is the leader of the majority party in the Lok Sabha, the lower house of Parliament. Additionally, the President appoints governors for states, the Attorney General of India, and the chiefs of the armed forces, among others. This power is outlined in Article 75 and Article 153 of the Indian Constitution. Legislative powers. In the legislative domain, the President plays a pivotal role in the functioning of Parliament. The President summons and prorogues Parliament sessions and can dissolve the Lok Sabha. According to Article 85, the President also gives assent to bills passed by Parliament, allowing them to become law. Moreover, the President can recommend the introduction of certain bills, especially those involving spending or taxes, as detailed in Article 117. Financial powers. Regarding financial matters, the President has a crucial say in the budgetary process. Article 112 mandates that the annual financial statement, commonly known as the budget, must be laid before Parliament only after being approved by the President. The President also has the power to sanction money for emergencies or urgent needs, as stated in Article 267. Judicial powers. The President of India also possesses some judicial powers. For instance, under Article 72, the President can grant pardons, reprieves, respites, or remissions of punishment. These powers can be exercised in particular cases, especially to those convicted of crimes against laws framed by the Union. Diplomatic powers. In terms of diplomacy, the President represents India in international forums and affairs. The President has the authority to negotiate and sign international treaties and agreements as detailed in Article 253. However, these treaties must be ratified by Parliament, ensuring that the President's actions are ultimately in line with the will of the legislature. Military powers. As the Supreme Commander of the Armed Forces, the President holds military powers that include appointing the chiefs of the Army, Navy, and Air Force. In times of war or military conflict, the President can make important decisions regarding military strategies and commands, although decisions are generally made in consultation with the Cabinet. Emergency powers. One of the most critical aspects of the President's powers is during a national emergency. Article 352 allows the President to proclaim a national emergency if the security of India or any part of it is threatened. During such emergencies, the President can assume greater powers, which include the authority to legislate by ordinance, temporary laws. There are also provisions under Article 356 for a state emergency and Article 360 for a financial emergency, which allows the President to take special measures if the financial stability of the country is at risk. Conclusion. In summary, the President of India plays a vital role in the functioning of the government through various powers that encompass executive, legislative, financial, judicial, diplomatic, military, and emergency domains. These powers are carefully defined in the Indian Constitution, ensuring a balanced and systematic approach to governance. Understanding the President's functions helps us appreciate the complexities of India's political structure and the significant role the President plays in upholding the Constitution and the law. Executive powers of the President of India. In India, the President holds significant executive powers and fulfills various functions that are essential for the proper functioning of the government. These powers are not just ceremonial, they play a crucial role in the governance of the country as per the Constitution of India. One of the primary roles of the President is that all executive actions of the Government of India are carried out in the President's name. This means that when the government makes decisions or takes actions, it is done officially as the President has sanctioned it. The President also has the authority to establish rules about how orders and documents should be validated when they are executed in their name. This ensures that there is a systematic method for carrying out government business. The President has the power to create rules that facilitate the smooth functioning of the Union government. This includes determining how the work is divided amongst various ministers, ensuring that the administration runs efficiently. An important power is the appointment of the Prime Minister. The Prime Minister, along with other ministers, is appointed by the President and holds office at the discretion of the President. Additionally, the President appoints key figures in the administration, such as the Attorney General of India, who advises the government on legal matters. The Attorney General serves during the pleasure of the President, meaning they can be removed or changed at any time at the President's discretion. The President also appoints the Controller and Auditor General, the Chief Election Commissioner, and other important positions that play a role in the functioning of democracy and governance, including the governors of states and members of the Finance Commission. The President has the authority to request information from the Prime Minister regarding the administration of the country and any proposed laws. This ensures that the President remains informed and can effectively perform their duties. If a minister makes a decision that hasn't been reviewed by the Council of Ministers, the President can require the matter to be discussed by the Council. This highlights the checks and balances in the Indian political system. Another key function of the President is to appoint commissions that investigate specific issues, such as the conditions of backward classes. This reflects the government's commitment to social justice and equality. The President can also form an interstate council to enhance cooperation between the central and state governments, which is crucial for maintaining harmony and addressing issues that affect multiple states. For the Union territories, which are regions directly governed by the central government, the President appoints administrators. This control is important as it ensures that these territories receive the governance and attention they require. Moreover, the President can declare certain areas as scheduled areas and holds special powers to manage the administration of these designated areas, which often include tribal regions. The powers and functions of the President are outlined in various articles of the Indian Constitution, such as Article 52, which establishes the office of the President, and Articles 75, 76, and 77, which detail the appointment of the Prime Minister and other ministers, the Attorney General, and the rules for conducting government business, respectively. These provisions collectively underscore the President's role as a pivotal figure in the Indian democratic setup, acting both as a ceremonial head of state and an active participant in governance. In conclusion, the executive powers of the President of India extend well beyond mere symbolism. They shape the very framework of the government, ensuring that it operates smoothly and efficiently while also addressing the needs and concerns of various segments of Indian society. The President's role is integral to maintaining the democratic ethos and administrative effectiveness of the country. Legislative powers of the President of India. The President of India plays a vital role in the country's parliament and possesses several important legislative powers that help maintain the functioning of the democratic system. These powers ensure that the President can effectively participate in the legislative process, even though the role is largely ceremonial. One of the key powers of the President is to summon or prorogue, discontinue, sessions of Parliament and to dissolve the Lok Sabha, which is the lower house of Parliament. This means the President can call the two houses of Parliament to meet or end their meetings. Additionally, the President can invite both houses to meet together for a joint session, which is overseen by the Speaker of the Lok Sabha. At the beginning of a new session, especially after a general election or at the start of each year, the President addresses the Parliament. This address outlines the government's plans and policies for the upcoming period. Furthermore, the President is empowered to send messages to the Parliament, which can concern proposed laws or other important issues. Another important legislative role of the President is in appointments. If both the Speaker and Deputy Speaker of the Lok Sabha are unavailable, the President can appoint any member from the Lok Sabha to preside over its sessions. Similarly, if both the Chairman and Deputy Chairman of the Rajya Sabha, the upper house, are not available, the President can appoint someone from the Rajya Sabha to take charge. The President nominates 12 members to the Rajya Sabha from individuals who have special knowledge or experience in fields like literature, science, art, or social service. It's important to note that before 2020, the President could also nominate two members from the Anglo-Indian community to the Lok Sabha, but this was ended with the 104th Constitutional Amendment Act of 2019. In terms of disqualifications of members of Parliament, the President consults with the Election Commission to make decisions. Moreover, the President's prior approval is necessary for certain types of legislation before they can be introduced in Parliament. This includes bills that involve spendings, such as those requiring funding from the Consolidated Fund of India, new state formation, money bills, and bills that impact the distribution of taxes or funds among the states. When a bill is passed by Parliament and sent to the President, he/she has three choices. The President can either give assent to the bill, withhold assent, or return the bill for reconsideration, except for money bills. If the bill is resubmitted after being passed again by Parliament, the President must give his/her assent. In the case of bills passed by state legislatures that are sent to the President for consideration, the same options apply. The President can grant assent, withhold it, or ask for the bill to be returned for further consideration, but it is not required for the President to grant assent even if the bill is passed again. The President can also make ordinances, which are emergency laws, if Parliament is not in session. These ordinances must be approved by Parliament within 6 weeks of its next session. The President has the authority to withdraw any ordinance at any time. Additionally, the President presents reports from various institutions like the Controller and Auditor General and the Finance Commission to Parliament. For certain territories such as the Andaman and Nicobar Islands, Lakshadweep, Dadra and Nagar Haveli, Daman and Diu, and Ladakh, the President can create regulations for governance. In certain situations, such as when the Puducherry Assembly is suspended or dissolved, the President can also legislate by making regulations. This comprehensive set of powers allows the President to effectively participate in the legislative process while ensuring the smooth functioning of the democratic system in India. These powers are derived from various articles in the Constitution of India, including Articles 85, 86, and 123, which outline the roles and responsibilities of the President concerning Parliament. Financial powers of the President of India. The President of India holds significant financial powers and responsibilities as part of the broader framework of the Indian government. These powers are outlined in various articles of the Indian Constitution, particularly in Articles 110, 113, 115, and 280, which govern financial matters. One of the key powers of the President is related to money bills. According to Article 110, a money bill, which deals with taxes or public expenditure, can only be introduced in Parliament with the President's prior approval. This means that the President must agree to the bill before it is presented for discussion. This role ensures that the financial processes are initiated with the guidance of the head of the state. Additionally, the President plays a crucial role in the financial planning of the country. The annual financial statement, commonly known as the Union Budget, is prepared and laid before Parliament with the President's involvement. The budget outlines the government's estimated expenditures and revenues for the upcoming fiscal year, providing an overview of the financial health of the country. Article 112 of the Constitution mandates that the President must present this statement each year. Furthermore, no demand for a grant can be made in Parliament unless it is recommended by the President. This stipulation ensures that all financial requests align with the government's needs and priorities as determined by the President. The recommendation acts as a check on potential misuse of funds and maintains a degree of control over government spending. In addition to these roles, the President has the authority to make advances from the Contingency Fund of India. This fund is intended for urgent or unforeseen expenses that cannot wait for parliamentary approval. This power allows the President to respond swiftly to emergencies, enhancing the government's ability to manage unexpected financial needs effectively. Moreover, the President is responsible for constituting a finance commission every 5 years, as laid out in Article 280 of the Constitution. This commission advises the President on the distribution of financial resources between the central government and the states. The Commission's recommendations help in ensuring a fair allocation of funds, which is crucial for maintaining financial stability and supporting various developmental programs at both state and central levels. In summary, the President's financial powers are essential for maintaining the economic order in India. These powers involve initiating money bills, presenting the budget, approving financial demands, managing unforeseen expenses, and overseeing the distribution of resources through the Finance Commission. Together, these responsibilities empower the President to play a vital role in the economic governance of the nation. Judicial powers of the President of India. The President of India holds significant judicial powers that allow for certain functions related to the country's legal system. Understanding these powers is essential as they play a crucial role in maintaining justice and upholding the law. Firstly, one of the key responsibilities of the President is to appoint judges to the higher judiciary. This includes the appointment of the Chief Justice and other judges of the Supreme Court, as well as judges of the high courts in various states. The process of appointment is overseen by a committee that typically includes the Prime Minister, the Chief Justice of India, and other senior judges, ensuring that qualified individuals are chosen for these important positions. Additionally, the President has the ability to seek advice from the Supreme Court on legal matters. Article 143 of the Indian Constitution empowers the President to refer any question of law or fact to the Supreme Court for its opinion. However, the Supreme Court's advice is not legally binding on the President, meaning the President is free to make decisions that may differ from the Court's opinion. One of the most significant judicial powers the President has is the ability to grant mercy. This includes the authority to pardon, reprieve, or commute sentences of individuals who have been convicted of crimes. The legal basis for this power can be found in Article 72 of the Indian Constitution. According to this article, the President can exercise these powers in three main scenarios. In cases where the punishment is awarded by a court-martial, which is a military court. When dealing with offences against laws specifically made by the Union government. In situations where the sentence is a death penalty. This power of clemency is important because it allows the President to show mercy in exceptional circumstances, reflecting the principles of justice and humanity. It serves as a check on the judicial system and offers a way to alleviate harsh or unjust punishment in specific cases. In summary, the judicial functions of the President of India consist mainly of judicial appointments, seeking legal advice from the Supreme Court, and exercising the power of clemency. These functions are governed by specific articles in the Indian Constitution and reflect the balance of powers within the country's legal framework, ensuring that justice can be upheld while giving room for mercy and correction in the judicial process. Diplomatic powers of the President of India. The President of India plays a significant role in managing the country's international relations. When it comes to forming international treaties and agreements, the President is the one who negotiates and finalizes these agreements. However, it is essential to know that all these treaties must be approved by the Parliament before they can take effect. This requirement ensures that elected representatives have oversight over important international commitments. In addition to negotiating treaties, the President represents India in international forums and events. This includes sending and receiving diplomats, such as ambassadors and high commissioners, who serve as the country's representatives in foreign nations. Their work is crucial for maintaining peaceful diplomatic relations and fostering cooperation between India and other countries. One important aspect of the President's powers is the ability to veto bills passed by Parliament. The President can refuse to give approval, assent, to a bill, and this power serves a couple of significant purposes. First, it helps prevent laws from being passed quickly without proper consideration. Secondly, it acts as a safeguard to ensure that the laws passed do not violate the Constitution of India. The veto power held by the President can be classified into four main types, although the President of India has specific kinds of veto powers. Absolute veto. This refers to the President's power to completely reject a bill passed by the Parliament. If the President uses this power, the bill does not become law. Qualified veto. This type of veto allows the legislature to override the President's decision, but it requires a larger majority than usual to do so. It's important to note that this type of veto does not exist in India. It is found in the United States. Suspensive veto. This allows the President to postpone the bill, but the Parliament can still override this veto with a simple majority. If the Parliament passes the bill again, it becomes law despite the President's objections. Pocket veto. This is when the President takes no action on a bill. If the bill is not signed within a specific time frame, it can be seen as a form of veto. In India, the President's powers consist of the absolute veto, suspensive veto, and pocket veto, but not the qualified veto. The Constitution of India outlines these powers and their implications in various articles. For instance, Article 111 of the Constitution clearly defines how the President should handle bills passed by Parliament. It states that the President can either give assent, withhold assent, or return the bill for reconsideration. Overall, the diplomatic powers of the President are essential for India's international relationships and legislative processes, ensuring that laws are carefully evaluated and aligned with the Constitution. The careful design of these powers reflects the intention of the framers of the Constitution to maintain a balance between the responsibilities of the President and the functions of the Parliament. Absolute veto. The term absolute veto refers to the special power that the President of India holds to completely reject a bill that has been approved by Parliament. When the President uses this power, the bill simply does not become a law or an act. This situation usually occurs in two main scenarios. Firstly, the absolute veto is frequently applied to bills that are introduced by private members of Parliament. A private member is anyone in Parliament who is not a part of the government, meaning they are not a minister. These bills are often less supported than government bills, making it more likely for the President to refuse assent. Secondly, the absolute veto can also apply to government bills. In this case, if a bill is passed by the Parliament but the Cabinet resigns before the President has the chance to approve it, the new Cabinet can recommend that the President refuse his assent. This situation creates a unique circumstance where the bill may have been approved by one group of government leaders but is disapproved by another. To illustrate this power, there have been notable instances in history. For example, in 1954, President Dr. Rajendra Prasad used his absolute veto on the PEPSU appropriation bill. This bill was passed while President's rule was in effect in the state of PEPSU, which means that the central government was temporarily taking control of the state government due to a lack of a functioning state government. However, by the time the bill reached Dr. Prasad, the President's rule had ended, which influenced his decision to withhold assent. Another example occurred in 1991 when President R. Venkataraman withheld his assent on the salary, allowances and pension of members of Parliament Amendment Bill. This bill had been passed by Parliament right before the Lok Sabha, the lower house of Parliament, was dissolved, but it was done without first obtaining the necessary approval from the President, which is required by Article 117 of the Indian Constitution. Understanding the absolute veto is important in the context of the Indian Constitution. The provisions dealing with this veto, including the powers of the President regarding legislation, are explained under Articles 111 to 123. Article 111 specifically discusses the President's role in relation to bills passed by either House of Parliament, outlining that the President can either give assent, withhold assent, or return the bill with a request for reconsideration, but this return process does not apply to money bills. In conclusion, the absolute veto is a crucial element of the legislative process in India, allowing the President to ensure checks and balances within the system of governance. It underscores the significance of the President's role in the legislative framework and adds another layer to the dynamic between the Parliament and the office of the President. Suspensive veto, understanding the President's role in Indian legislation. In India, the President has a special power called the suspensive veto. This allows the President to send a bill back to Parliament for further discussion if they believe the bill needs more consideration. When the President returns a bill, it is a way of saying, "Let's think about this some more." However, if Parliament discusses the bill again and passes it once more, either changing some parts or keeping it the same, the President must accept the bill and give his or her approval. This is different from the process in the United States, where a higher level of approval is needed to override a presidential veto. It is important to note that this suspensive veto does not apply to money bills. Money bills are specific types of legislation that deal with taxation or government spending. According to Article 110 of the Indian Constitution, the President cannot send a money bill back to Parliament for reconsideration. Instead, the President can only choose to either approve it or reject it. Typically, the President agrees to these money bills because they require the President's consent before being introduced in Parliament. This procedure ensures that while the President has a role in the legislative process, the final decision remains with Parliament. It reflects a system of checks and balances designed to prevent any single branch of government from becoming too powerful. Additionally, Article 111 of the Indian Constitution provides the framework for these veto powers, stating that the President can return a bill, except for money bills, if they think it should be reconsidered. In summary, the suspensive veto is a vital and interesting power of the President that aids in the legislative process. It allows for a second chance at discussion for bills, ensuring that lawmakers consider a range of viewpoints before finalizing new laws. Connection to specific constitutional articles like Article 110 regarding money bills and Article 111 regarding the President's veto underscores the importance of this process in maintaining democracy and good governance in India. Pocket veto. The concept of a pocket veto refers to a situation where the President of India neither approves nor declines a bill. Instead, the President simply allows the bill to remain undecided for an unspecified length of time. This power to take no action at all on a bill is known as the pocket veto. In India, the Constitution does not set a specific time limit for the President to make a decision about a bill that has been presented for approval. This is different from the United States, where the President must return the bill within 10 days if not signed or vetoed. Because of this absence of a deadline in the Indian Constitution, it is often said that the Indian President has a broader scope of authority, or bigger pocket, compared to the US President. One notable example of the use of the pocket veto occurred in 1986, when President Zail Singh chose not to act on the Indian Post Office Amendment Bill. This particular bill, passed during the regime of the then Prime Minister Rajiv Gandhi, sought to impose restrictions on the freedom of the press and was met with significant criticism from various quarters. After 3 years of inaction, in 1989, the subsequent President, R. Venkataraman, eventually sent the bill back for reconsideration. However, the new government, known as the National Front, opted to discard the bill entirely. It's crucial to mention that the President of India does not have a veto power regarding constitutional amendment bills. According to Article 368 of the Indian Constitution, the President is obliged to give assent to a constitutional amendment bill. This means that while the President can exercise a pocket veto for ordinary legislation, they must approve constitutional amendments without fail. The ability of the President to exercise a pocket veto illustrates a significant aspect of the legislative process in India. It reflects the checks and balances inherent in the Indian political system, allowing the President to use discretion over matters that may require further debate or reflection. This power underscores the President's role in upholding democratic values and ensuring that potentially controversial legislation does not become law without sufficient scrutiny. The pocket veto can influence how legislation is presented and debated in Parliament, reminding legislators that their proposals may face delays or rejection at the highest level. Understanding the President's powers, including the pocket veto, is essential for grasping the checks and balances that characterize the Indian political framework, as outlined in various articles of the Constitution, most notably in Articles 111, 116, and 368. Presidential veto over state legislation. In India, the President has the power to veto or reject laws made by state governments as well. For a bill passed by a state legislature to become a law, it needs to be approved either by the state governor or, in certain situations, by the President of India. This typically happens when a bill is set aside specifically for the President's approval. When a state legislature sends a bill to the governor for approval, the governor has four choices according to Article 200 of the Indian Constitution. First, the governor can approve the bill, allowing it to become law. Second, the governor can decide to reject or refuse the bill. Third, if the bill is not on financial matters, the governor can send it back to the state legislature for further discussion and consideration. Lastly, the governor can choose to reserve the bill for the President's consideration. If the bill is sent up to the President because the governor reserved it, the President also has several options to consider under Article 201 of the Constitution. The President can either approve the bill, refuse to give approval, or direct the governor to resend the bill back to the state legislature for reconsideration. It's important to note that even if the state legislature passes the bill again, whether or not they make changes, the President is not obligated to approve it. This means that the legislature does not have the power to overturn the President's veto. Additionally, the Constitution does not specify a time limit for the President to decide on a bill sent from the governor. This gives the President the ability to use what is known as a pocket veto. Essentially, if the President does not act on the bill and does not provide a decision, it effectively remains unapproved. The veto power of the President is significant because it ensures checks and balances in the legislative process. This power allows the federal authority to maintain oversight on state laws, which can be crucial for upholding certain national principles or standards. To summarize the presidential veto power regarding state legislation, the Indian Constitution provides thorough guidelines under Article 200 and Article 201. This framework ensures that while state legislatures have the power to create legislation, there is also a safeguard in place that involves both the governor and the President, maintaining a balance of power across different levels of government in India. This system helps prevent any single body from having too much control, ensuring that laws serve the interests of both state and national governance. Ordinance-making power of the President. In India, the Constitution grants the President the authority to make laws through ordinances when Parliament is not in session, as stated in Article 123. These ordinances act similarly to laws passed by Parliament but are temporary. The President's ability to create ordinances is a significant legislative power designed to handle urgent situations or unforeseen problems that require quick action. However, there are important limitations on this power. First, the President can only issue an ordinance when both houses of Parliament are not in session, or when one of them is not in session. It is crucial to note that if both houses are meeting, then issuing an ordinance is not valid. Additionally, the President's decision to issue an ordinance is based on their assessment of necessity, which can be evaluated by a court if there are claims of misuse. For instance, in the Cooper case from 1970, the Supreme Court clarified that if the President prorogued Parliament to introduce an ordinance on a contentious topic, it could be legally challenged. Originally, the 38th Constitutional Amendment Act of 1975 made the President's decision unchallengeable in court, but this provision was removed by the 44th Amendment in 1978. This means the President's reasons for issuing an ordinance can be scrutinized, especially if there are accusations of acting in bad faith. Moreover, the scope of the President's ordinance-making power covers all areas where Parliament can create laws, except for the duration. This indicates two main points. First, ordinances can only be enacted on topics allowed for parliamentary laws. Second, ordinances must adhere to the same constitutional restrictions as Parliament's laws. For example, ordinances cannot violate any fundamental rights guaranteed by the Constitution. Once Parliament reconvenes, any ordinance must be presented to both houses. If both houses approve it, the ordinance becomes a law. If there's no action from Parliament within 6 weeks, the ordinance will automatically become invalid. It can also be revoked earlier if both houses pass a resolution against it. When Parliament is called back on separate dates, the 6-week timeframe begins from the later of those dates. Therefore, the maximum duration an ordinance can last is 6 months and 6 weeks in case of non-approval by Parliament. If an ordinance expires without being reviewed by Parliament, any actions taken under it before its expiration remain valid. The President also holds the authority to withdraw an ordinance at any time. It is vital to understand that the President's power to create ordinances is not discretionary. The President can only act on this power upon the advice of the Council of Ministers, which is headed by the Prime Minister. An ordinance can take effect retroactively, meaning it can be applied to events that occurred before the ordinance was issued. It can also modify or repeal previous laws, including tax laws, except for any efforts to change the Constitution itself. The President's ordinance-making power in India is not commonly seen in other democratic nations, including the United States and the United Kingdom. Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, a key figure in drafting India's constitution, explained that the creation of this ordinance mechanism allows the executive to respond quickly to urgent situations when Parliament is unavailable to act. It is also important to note that the ordinance-making power is not only reserved for cases of national emergencies outlined in Article 352 of the Constitution. The President can issue ordinances even in normal times, without war or conflict. When a bill is introduced in the Lok Sabha to replace an ordinance, specific rules require that a statement be provided to explain the reasons for the immediate need for legislation through an ordinance. An illustrative legal precedent is the D.C. Vadhva case from 1986, where the Supreme Court found that the governor of Bihar had repeatedly extended ordinances over the years without seeking legislative approval. The court ruled that continuously repromulgating the same ordinances without legislative consideration violated the Constitution. In summary, the President's ordinance-making power is a crucial part of India's legislative framework, aimed at rapid governance during times when the legislative body is inactive. However, it comes with significant checks and balances to ensure that it is not misused and that it remains in line with the broader principles of the Constitution. Pardon power of the President. The Constitution of India gives the President special powers to grant pardons through Article 72. This means the President can pardon individuals who have been found guilty of crimes, particularly in certain situations, such as when the punishment comes from a law made by the central government, when it involves a military court, or in cases where the punishment is death. This power of pardoning is separate from the judicial system, which means that the President does not act like a court that decides appeals. The main reasons for giving this power to the President are to fix any mistakes that may have happened in court decisions and to offer relief to those whose punishments may be too severe. There are different types of pardons that the President can grant. Pardon. This completely clears the person of their conviction and any punishment. It removes both the guilty verdict and the sentence against them. Commutation. This means changing a punishment to a lighter one. For instance, a death penalty can be changed to life imprisonment, or a rigorous imprisonment sentence can be changed to simpler terms. Remission. This involves reducing the length of a punishment without changing what the punishment is. For example, a 2-year rigorous imprisonment sentence could be cut down to 1 year. Respite. This is when the punishment is reduced because of special circumstances. This could be due to the health condition of the convict or if the convict is a pregnant woman. Reprieve. This means temporarily halting the execution of a punishment, especially in the case of a death sentence. It allows the convict some time to seek forgiveness or to have their sentence changed. Additionally, Article 161 of the Constitution also gives power to the governors of states to grant pardons. The governor can provide pardons, reprieves, respites, and remissions for those convicted under state laws. However, there are important differences between the powers of the president and the governor. For instance, the president can pardon sentences given by military courts, while governors do not have this ability. The president also has the authority to pardon death sentences, while governors can only stop, reduce, or change these sentences. In the Supreme Court case known as the Kehar Singh case, 1988, several key points about the president's pardoning power were established. These points clarify how this power can be used. Firstly, a person asking for mercy does not have the right to a hearing in front of the president. Secondly, the president can look at the evidence on their own and might reach a different conclusion than the court. The president's decisions are made based on the advice from the Union Cabinet. Furthermore, the Supreme Court does not need to set specific rules on how the president should use this power. Lastly, the president's exercise of power is generally not open to review by the Supreme Court unless it is found to be unfair, irrational, or discriminative. In summary, the pardoning power of the president is a significant aspect of the Indian legal system, allowing for mercy and correction of potential judicial errors, while also distinguishing the core roles of the president and governors regarding the constitutional position of the President of India. The Constitution of India establishes a parliamentary system of government. This means that the President of India serves primarily as a symbolic figure, often referred to as a nominal executive, while the real power lies with the Council of Ministers led by the Prime Minister. In simpler terms, the President acts based on the advice and support of the Council of Ministers. Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, who was instrumental in drafting the Indian Constitution, explained the role of the President by comparing it to that of the English monarchy. He stated that while the title, President, might remind people of the President of the United States, the responsibilities and powers associated with this role in India are very different. In the United States, the President is the chief executive with significant authority. In contrast, in India, the President is the head of the state but does not actually govern. Their role is largely ceremonial. They represent the country but do not exercise real political power. The President must follow the advice of the Council of Ministers, which means they cannot act independently or make decisions contrary to that council. For example, while the President of the United States has the power to fire cabinet members, the Indian President cannot do so as long as the ministers have the majority support in Parliament. To understand the constitutional role of the President, specific articles of the Constitution are important. Article 53 states that the executive power of the Union, the central government, is vested in the President. However, this power is exercised directly by the President or through subordinate officers in accordance with the Constitution. Article 74 explains that there will be a Council of Ministers headed by the Prime Minister to assist and advise the President. The President must act according to this advice. Article 75 indicates that the Council of Ministers is collectively accountable to the Lok Sabha, meaning they must have the support of the majority of this lower house of Parliament to remain in power. The 42nd Constitutional Amendment Act of 1976, passed during Indira Gandhi's government, reinforced the idea that the President is bound by the advice of the Council of Ministers. Later, the 44th Constitutional Amendment Act of 1978, enacted by the Janata Party government, gave the President the authority to ask the Council of Ministers to reconsider their advice, but once the Council reconsidered, the advice would still be binding. there have been instances demonstrating the President's limited discretion. For example, in October 1997, President K.R. Narayanan asked the cabinet to reconsider a recommendation for President's rule in Uttar Pradesh, leading to the cabinet deciding against it, which allowed the BJP-led government to stay in power. Similarly, in September 1998, President Narayanan returned a request to impose President's rule in Bihar, which was later re-advised and eventually put into effect in February 1999. Although the President typically acts on the advice of ministers, there are a few situations where the President has some discretion. This includes situations like appointing a Prime Minister when no party has a clear majority in the Lok Sabha, or if the current Prime Minister dies suddenly without a clear successor. Dismissing the Council of Ministers if they cannot prove their majority or confidence in the Lok Sabha. Dissolving the Lok Sabha if the Council of Ministers has lost its majority. In conclusion, the President of India plays a crucial yet limited role within the country's political structure. While the President symbolizes the nation and performs various ceremonial duties, the true power of governance lies with the Council of Ministers and the Prime Minister under the constitutional framework established by the Indian Constitution. The defined articles and amendments ensure that the President operates within a system where support from the Parliament is paramount.